probably 10:55 sharp.
So does he. So
You do?
we're good.
Okay. All right.
So that's good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get it done. All
Yeah,
right.
No.
yeah, no, that's totally fine.
And I talk really, really fast, and I'm well caffeinated this morning. So, again, thank you all for sitting down with us today. We're trying to figure out how to build a house on 7 acres that we purchased, and we're continuing to run into some hurdles. The latest one being this drawing, which we have agreed to for our part of the acreage to accept the dedicated right-of-ways. We have tried to work with Terry Yang and her husband Daryl, and they're not interested at any cost of selling their right-of-way to us for compensation. They view it as they're losing land and
It's a
losing
city
their
grab.
investment, and then it's a grab by the city, and they're unwilling to negotiate with us on any type of compensation. Because I even asked them, I said, well, we made a proposal. They turned it down. We went back on, is there a dollar amount that you would accept for the piece here in yellow on their property? So from this 80 feet is outlined up to the 55 feet at the top, and they basically said no. So to further make things interesting and in full transparency, we've always intended to subdivide our 7
Which I thought it was y'all.
into 3 acres across the top that we plan on building on. We've got friends that have already got a verbal for 1.4 in the middle, and then there's a piece down here that Terry is interested in for 2.9. We had a verbal agreement with them when we submitted the application to plat.
Terry is
The owner.
Terry's the owner of the,
The Yanks.
the Yanks.
Yes.
Okay.
yep. Well, it's not Yang's because her husband has a different last name.
Correct,
Sorry.
but it's
But
The 657.
Yeah.
657 owner, yes.
So this right here, the owner is Terry and her husband Daryl. We got a verbal to sell them 2.9 acres on the southern part of ours because they're interested in continuing to board horses, which they're doing currently. So when all this came about, they said no on purchasing the right-of-way or compensating them for the right-of-way that they need to dedicate. And now we somewhat feel like we're being held hostage because the verbal for the $775,000 that we'd agreed upon as a sale price, they've now come back and said, well, you're gonna have to significantly sweeten that because we're giving up land.
By about $290,000.
So we wanted to know what our options were before we have to just go continuing to try to negotiate with them under the conditions which I somewhat feel are unethical in how they're managing this. So that's kind of where we stand. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
So we didn't know if there is any opportunity for a variance to allow for 2 driveways so that we could build, or if eminent domain comes into play at all, because we understand that the main purpose of this is for public safety. Because I guess there was a barn or home.
Yeah, on Oak Hill,
back.
across from,
Yeah.
across from their property.
And we get that, and we're not opposed to any of that. We're at a crossroads on where we need to figure out kind of what we're doing as far as how far do we negotiate with Terry? Or to some point, this becomes a money equation for us because we're again not developers. We're just trying to build a house on the 7 acres we bought. And do we have to look at trying to sell this land, but it's a tough sell whenever it can't be developed? And we had no means of paying 1.3 million for 7 acres of pasture. Our intent was to build and subdivide from the very beginning. So,
Which property are you, I'm sorry?
This
so that,
northern
that
part
top
of
piece,
657.
yeah,
So all of this is somewhere around 11.
correct.
And the northern part was
There
purchased
you go.
by meets and bounds at about 7 acres.
So
Correct.
this is what we,
The intent for this,
Okay.
it has not been officially subdivided, it's one now, but this is what we're going to subdivide it into. And then this is what the Yangs currently own.
Got it.
And then this is from here to here, and this huge cul-de-sac, this is what we're willing to dedicate to the city
Got it.
to get it done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for catching me up.
Yeah.
Sorry I was late.
so no, you're good, and welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are, you've heard from Mr. Fink what their challenges are. Let me go ahead and just quickly identify the 4 areas that the city is challenged in. The first is whether or not to view this as a minor or major subdivision development. And that a line is drawn, I believe in the state statutes, interrupt me if you need to, Sarah or Julie, at 3. So 3 or less is a minor, 4 or
Four.
more is, or is it 4 or more?
It's more than 4.
It's more than 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Becomes a major. The difference between that, the significance of that distinction is that when you are a major subdivision, you have no choice but to extend a road, water, and utilities, water, sewer, and road. So, the state code or the city UDC, Unified Development Code, they don't make a distinction between a well-funded, deep-pocketed Walmart developer or a individual, I wanna build a house on a lot developer. Both are developers in both documents. As a result, many times the discussion, and I hear this, I'm gonna verbalize what I hear from the Finks, if I can be so,
No,
You're
to
please,
say that,
please.
is that while these rules may work well for a Walmart-sized developer, they appear to be onerous for an individual, I wanna build a house developer. But again, the distinction between the two is not appreciated in either the state statutes or UDC. So the first is, how do we view this? Whether it's a minor subdivision or a major subdivision. Even if we get past that and we say it's a minor for the specific development, we have the issue of the number of driveways off of a shared access easement. Our current code draws that line at 3. 3 or less, you have a shared driveway, much like what you, Mayor, you get to experience off of Davis. You have multiple individual lots that are on a single driveway. City went through great pains about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, of identifying, how many do we want to allow on a shared drive, and that line was drawn at 3.
What was it
or
before?
less. It was 5 or less. The problem with this is that we have already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 owners that are on here. So anyone who wanted to do anything on here, or subdivide, is by far has exceeded that trigger for number of lots off of a shared driveway.
So even under the, if I can summarize, even under the previous version of the code, this specific situation would still trigger.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
And so the number of drives allowed the number of properties allowed on a shared drive is the second hurdle. The next hurdle, which is what we're talking about here, and I'm gonna briefly touch on it, but glance off because we're gonna spend a lot more time on that, is access and right-of-way dedication. Because the first 2 hurdles haven't been cleared, we see that this has to be treated as we have to have access. Shared drive does not seem to be the option, so now we are by default into a public street. You can go private street, but it's more right of way, and that's why we continue to say public street. That public street is what we see on the screen here. What is being discussed is essentially this yellow that we see on here, and that is solely because 652 west of the Yangs essentially told everybody to go spit in the wind.
Yeah.
And so as a result, the developer, the Finks, has to try to figure out, how do I connect to the public street that exists at the north end of the Methodist Church. So right of way exists from there to Johnson Road, and then from the north property line of the church and northward is all private drive, with the exception of right of way that's been dedicated over the years, but nothing's connected. This is the problem, it's not connected. So one option is to push all of the right of way onto the Yangs, which they again were parroting what 652 said, go spit in the wind, because in order to achieve the full 50-foot width, it ends up being about a 78-foot impact to the Yangs to align with the offset alignment. There have been some options looked at. Let me go to the next one. And that's to make it a more direct connection to 50 feet to the south until you can hit 50 feet to the north, but that still includes to some degree, 652 is the property of the west. That could be extended north perhaps potentially and avoid them altogether, but, you know, then you end up just, you know, eating into more of everybody else's land to avoid 652. So that's one option. Another option could be,
How much of I apologize, how much of the,
I have no idea, this is just a sketch
yep,
on it.
okay,
Another option would be to go back and pressure 652 a bit more and make it a bit more equitable between the two, between the Yangs and 652, and then streamline and make that connection more intuitive by everyone sharing. And then finally, adjusting it all together and make that part of the discussion with the Methodist Church, where you avoid impacting any one individual disproportionately to everyone else. All of these are different options that can be considered, but at the end of the day, you still have to talk to multiple owners and they still have to sell you that property.
Donzo, with that option with the church,
Mhm.
does that require the other owners to give up right away besides the church?
yes.
That's
It
correct.
looks like it does.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So this
And
is
bring us
Right
where,
away, maybe.
And
Instead of
Brittany's
the
had
gangs-
discussion with the church and they're willing to talk to us, but it's one of those, you start having 3 people you have to negotiate with other than just one, and if we leave here today and you all advise us that we're stuck without Terry Yang agreeing to us, at least we know what our options are.
Yeah.
And we have a walkaway position that we're prepared to make to her, or we try to put the
We'll put
property
it
back
back
for
on the
sale.
sale and
And it's,
lose hundreds of thousands of
yeah,
dollars.
it's just, where do you lose less money? So, but at least, that's what we're looking for today is, I mean, we've talked to the church, we've not talked to Staley, but
Yeah, we,
have you?
yes,
Okay,
yeah, they're telling us to go pound sand.
okay.
They've lived in that house since it was built, and that's a no-go. No.
And they all know that they can't do anything as well.
They don't care.
They don't care, and that's unfortunately what we're told, and that's part of our argument with Terry and her husband, is you understand you cannot develop your land. You can't build a barn, you can't sell this in the future. It's not as valuable as if it was a plat. And
they may be challenged in taking possession of whatever property they hope to get from you, because that'll have to be platted as well.
and we're trying to explain that to them, and we're peeing in the wind.
Yeah. I do have a question.
So, just
Go ahead.
before you
Oh,
ask
please,
that,
no,
if I may,
please.
Just the end of
Yes.
my summary, so even if we got past major minor subdivisions, even if we got past the number of lots on a drive, even if we got past the procurement or the identification of right of way, there's still the question of who's gonna build and pay for the cost of the pavement and the road that goes in. And so there's some significant hurdles of which we have no definitive answers to any 4 of them, but any one of them is enough to derail this. So back to your question, I'm sorry.
I do have a question. We have found out, well, I mean, I've known the whole time, but the Yangs currently, they board 10 horses on that property without a permit. Is that something that could possibly, with them having to get a special use permit to continue boarding their horses, is that something that would force them into a platting situation?
So the issue with that one is that the horses have been boarded there for a very long time.
Yes.
And that is most likely grandfathered.
Okay, what about them running an Airbnb? Because they have no intentions of ever living there
Yeah, we don't regulate STRs in the city of Keller.
for right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But to answer an inevitable follow-up question, if they come in for a change.
Elijah, let me clarify just because I want to make sure. And my understanding is that they're renting the entire house. Is that the case as an Airbnb?
Yes.
Okay. Our ordinance doesn't allow things like accessory dwelling units to be rented for at all. They're supposed to be mother-in-law suites. But if someone can rent currently in the city of Keller, you can rent the entire residence as a short-term rental. So I just want to make sure I was telling you the right thing, Brittany. Sorry.
Okay, no, you're totally fine.
So is it also true, Julie, that if the Yangs or 652 or anybody else on this shared drive wants to come in for a building permit or accessory building or anything like that, it would trigger, they would abandon their grandfather status.
Okay, so, not necessarily. So for instance, if they wanted to do an expansion on the house, it's not gonna impact the use of the horses, right? I mean, that's been going on forever. However, what it will do is they have to plat to get a permit.
And we've explained that to them several times, and basically they don't care. I mean, she basically essentially told us, we're not.
Yeah, we told them,
Yeah.
we told them too, thinking that, I said, you guys cannot build anything here without platting this property.
Correct, and they
Well,
have
and in
no
our
intentions of it.
negotiations with them on potentially selling them some land, they're devaluing the property value because they're viewing it only as pasture and not developable. Well, as soon as you plat it, then it is a developable
Why
property.
do they not wanna plat?
Well, more to
They're
the
holding us
point.
hostage, in my opinion, because they don't want to, at any price, sell some of their right of way.
right-of-way.
Because we've offered to compensate them for that, to finalize the plat, and they said, no, they don't wanna give up any land. And I can put
Right.
myself in her shoes, it does encroach on their driveway and
Not that
and
much.
it does a little bit. We're emotional about this, so you need to calm down for a
Okay.
second. But
Sorry.
they still
Let me
would
just-
like to buy from us. We're not gonna sell it to them without a plat, because we don't see that as negotiable to sell them on meets and bounds. So it's one of those, if that's our only option when we leave here today, we just need to decide,
Are we selling or?
are we selling, or do we just put the whole 7 back on the market again? So,
It might be worth it, we tried to do this, and Alonzo, make sure I'm saying this correctly, but it might be worth it to reiterate, when if they ever have to build something, anything, short of a remodel of the house that doesn't expand the footprint, sorry, that's a building permit. Any building permit will trigger a plat. And that's under International Building Code. I mean, that's just standard everywhere.
Right.
And so, assuming at some point, especially people on agricultural property or people, property being used, you tend to have to build things, whether that's a loafing shed or whatever it is. And when they have to do that, they're gonna have to plat. And when they have to plat, Alonzo is gonna make them dedicate at least half of this right of way, and the city does not pay them for that half.
That's correct.
Okay, they have to do that just like what we're asking you to do when you plat. Right? Anytime anybody plats, you've got to dedicate the right of way, your share of it. Now, I know that the neighbor across the street's not playing. I understand that. But at a minimum, if they platted, we would be making them dedicate at least half of that right of way. And you all are offering to pay them for the right of way.
Correct. And they
So-
don't, we've explained that to them probably 20 times. And I know you all have explained that. I know Alonzo has explained that. Our surveyor has explained that. And they basically don't care. Like they said, nope, we won't ever build anything and we don't care. We're not doing this. So what we feel we need to do is come up with an option that does not include, is there an option that does not include them giving up their land or the Staley's giving up in lieu of a variance or a, eminent domain? It is agricultural land, and I know you said that, I did have a question about that eminent domain wasn't an option, but it is, where this is ag land. It's not their residence. Their property is actually split up into 2 lots. They have the homestead, which is 1 acre, and then they have the 3 acres around it in a U shape that is all ag land, and it's taxed as ag land. So
the taxing, so that's typical of what the TAD does for taxing.
absolutely,
So
completely.
what an appraisal district does in terms of how they categorize land has nothing to do with the zoning of that municipality.
Right.
So they typically put the house on 1 acre in terms of calculating the taxes, but that doesn't mean that that house is platted on 1 acre or that it's agricultural use or whatever. In Keller, we don't have any ag zoning. Kind of
Okay.
unusual.
In other words, TAD is not really reliable. Is that?
Well, the problem for Tad is it's really confusing,
Yeah.
no matter what city you live in. The other cities I've worked for did have agricultural zoning, some with very large agricultural areas, big ranches and that type of thing. And people call me, go, no, this is zoned homestead. I'm like, yeah, there's not a zoning district called homestead. That's just construction that makes it convenient for the appraisal district in terms of calculating taxes. So.
I don't know if there's any, like additional facts, but I guess the way that I'm analyzing this problem, I need to know if it's correct, is there's, basically only 2 or 3 options. One is try to get the private party option, get the parties to negotiate amongst themselves. That doesn't look like it's very viable. My only follow-up question to that is, if the church dedicates, as much right away as they can to make, the street, the public access viable under our UDC, what does that proportional share look like for the other owners? Do we have any idea on that?
It's still 50. Our surveyor actually drew it up,
So it's still
using,
pretty heavy.
it's still 50 feet on the Yang's property. Yeah.
What about the others?
And, I mean, the problem is the streets are like this,
Yeah,
so
what
at some
about-
point you gotta,
What about to the west? Because that's the other problem too. is-
That's the Staley's, and we know that's an
yeah.
Well,
absolute.
that one party's telling you, we're not gonna play ball in a nice way, and the other party's not even talking to you, and so they're both basically saying the same thing in my mind.
They are. They're
So-
basically
So-
saying no.
I guess my question is, all right, it's 50 feet on the Yangs, what about, is it Stevenson, Louise, or something like that? I forget.
Staley.
Staley's.
Staley, okay. What about them? Do we know based on yours, Brittany, yours?
They're the ones who won't even. They've lived there since 1974, and
So
they're
if you got 50 feet from the Yangs, then that would solve the issue?
no. No.
Well, if we got 50 from Terry Yang, we could work with the church to get
To
that
transition
connection,
back down.
yeah.
Yeah, but we don't
So
even
it's
know.
50 versus 80 with Terry.
Okay.
So-
The church plays ball. Like
Then
they
it's
did,
50.
It would be 50.
If the church doesn't, then it's 80.
So.
And
if
we've
I-
spoken to the church. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
And it's, they have, when I spoke to the board of their directors, a couple times this week, their only issue is they have development plans for that field, to expand the church. And so that was their concern on it, because they are expanding their property. I mean, not their property, but they're expanding their buildings. Yes.
How goofy that
So,
right away line
then
is.
The right-of-way line makes no sense. I don't know how it it got done the way it did.
So that's the first option in my mind, private party solution. Second option, theoretically would be, is it varianceable? And I think, because I know I sent an email to our city attorney. Julie, do you have anything, or Alonzo or Sarah?
So I briefly looked at that because it is not a state code question, it is a UDC question. And the ability to vary or to grant a variance for right of way does not appear to be available in UDC for anyone, for us at staff level.
What about a variance to build 2 or 3 driveways off of Hallelujah? I mean, we are dedicating all of that land for our full 7 acres. We're gonna have sprinklers in both houses. We're probably bringing in gas. And then at that point, at least the city has, all of ours. We know for sure that they are getting, 1160 are getting ready to plat, and you all have a huge majority of what you want.
Where's the
And
gap?
we know, we do know that it'll be a long time, so at that point, maybe the Yanks will sell.
Well,
And,
let me.
I mean, is that something
I'm struggling with
negotiable?
this next suggestion, because this is what you're supposed to hire an engineer for, but you get it because the mayor's here. Let's think, let's.
Pro bono. Province pro bono engineer.
Let's skin this cat a different way. If these two, 652 and 657, the Yangs and the Staleys, are adamant, just go fly a kite.
Yep.
What if we try to skin this cat by coming from the north instead? And instead of the cul-de-sac being at the northwest corner of your property, it is in the southwest corner of your property. And the if you can get 1160, the to-be-developed property, and 749 to talk, you can split it. If they don't talk, then are you amenable to even considering 50 feet on yours? This 25 feet of green is already set aside in
Right.
anticipation of
Yep,
purchase.
we know.
And then your only option or hurdle may be the
Yeah, because
1160.
at this
We
point,
don't
I'd rather
care.
give you the 50 feet than have to deal with Terry.
And that's what I'm gathering.
Because the amount I think that we're gonna have to compensate her for is illogical.
Sure.
And I
It's-
would
yeah.
rather give you guys that 50 feet in the north
Yeah.
and tell her to go fly a kite. Cause I've
In which
joked, I
case-
just wanna get some big old sows and put them there and have fans that just blow the pig manure.
I get you. Well, I'm saying that there may be a different way to do this,
We
rather than to give up the ship as sunk.
Yeah,
Maybe there's something else to consider, and then these circles of cul-de-sac get pushed down here, either as a permanent or temporary, but that then puts the onus on the Yangs and the Staleys to, as soon as they come in, then they can get to do it, no compensation.
yeah. Well, and it gives us a little bit of something to go back and try to negotiate one last time with Terry and Daryl on is, hey, here's an alternative plan that we're looking at, and you're gonna be stuck. Cause you're gonna have to give a free dedication at some point when you go to plat.
Instead of paying
And
for it.
I'm comfortable with the 50 feet on the north.
Totally fine.
And as Brittany stated, 1160 is gonna go through a plat process, you should be able
We
to
know when.
complete that.
What about
Next year, but it's not till next year.
what about the middle lot to the,
That's 749?
749.
Well, if we
That's-
give you 50 feet, do you need it?
that's,
You won't, because
Yeah.
it'll all be on the.
Yeah.
fence
We'll,
property.
just- we'll sacrifice what we need to get it
Yeah,
done. I
to
mean,
get
we'll,
this
we'll go
done.
ask, but
Yeah.
if they tell us to go fly a kite or make an unreasonable offer, at least we can say, hey, we don't need 7 acres.
Isn't that Boyle?
Hmm?
749?
is that John?
John Boyle?
No.
No, that's
She's
the
on
other
Oak Hill.
side of,
Okay.
on the other side.
So,
Okay.
Was that gonna go up?
Cause she would go tell you to pound sand also.
Right.
Oh, we can go a little peacock haven.
I was like,
Yes.
are you sure you wanna be a part of this neighborhood?
No.
Yeah.
Well, we
Hey,
do.
hey, I'm 1240.
Okay.
Yeah, she's 1240.
Just repeating that, yeah.
Yeah.
I have only thought through access from the north as much as we've talked about it today.
Sure.
I don't know what other considerations may come into play as a result, because Oak Hill is
Oak
a
Hill's been-
tremendously long road.
Yeah.
It's gonna be longer again, and these residents are very happy to never see anybody develop again next to them.
So is 749, but he, at least the times I've spoken with him, seems reasonable. They just don't want the road. Because the only reason why they don't want the road is they think that it's gonna be a cut through for high school kids.
Which no one's gonna do that.
No one's gonna.
It's
No.
not efficient.
It is absolutely not.
No, and personally, I would like emergency vehicles to get to my house if my, fire sprinklers malfunction. So,
What's about Oak Hill? They were bothering us about paving, or building a road there for forever, right?
Right, we are tasked to finish the paving here, because all of this is just gravel, but we'll pave it to the end as part of our street rehab, and then it's up to,
That plat currently has a cul-de-sac right there.
right.
yes, it does. Is it still something that we can go to P&Z and to council, and since we're offering up so much land, the city would pay for the road to come in turn for all of our dedication of land?
Yeah, if we could get around, my instinct is, I guess I'm correcting everyone, so I have to open your mouth. So my instinct is that Alonzo would probably have to go run some traps to make sure, because we're engineering on the fly essentially, is what we're doing in the meeting. Make sure that, we can verify, the strategy that North will work from an engineering and a design perspective, right, Alonzo?
Physically, it'll work.
Okay, so run some traps, see what other hiccups may exist. The question about whether to pay for the street is a policy decision for council.
We've never done that before. We've always made a developer pay for it.
Right. Yeah, and Harmon's, he's really tight on the money, so.
And I will say
And
that,
again, we just need to know because we don't have that kind of cash.
No, so at that point,
So at
we're
that point,
selling.
we're selling.
What do you,
And we're under a bit of a gun, and I really do appreciate this conversation, but from our standpoint, we need to make a decision one way or the other here in the next few weeks, because we're either doing a construction loan or we're not. certain things start timing out with our builder on locked-in pricing. So we have about a 3-week window to where
I mean, it
we need
would
to understand our
like-
variables.
So what's, I
Go
guess,
ahead.
well, I'm just wondering, I mean, if the city were, I mean, it is a policy decision, so we're just one and two amongst council, but,
Sure.
and staff, obviously, you may have to weigh it in with
I just worry
city
about
attorneys.
precedence, you know me, and we're asking Ed Rubel to spend $1 million for a trail, and,
My other question would be, if they're giving that land, I guess, what would be equitable? You know, what's the value of that land? And I don't know if that's something that we can track, but what would be the value of that land as opposed to, or in contrast to just building out that?
We can figure that, take it off TAD documents and do a square footage.
it's not, yeah, it will be.
I mean, cause I mean, if they're comparable, then I think that's.
Well, I mean,
That's-
it's
that's
3/4 of an
That's
acre.
3/4 an acre just for the 50 feet on the north end.
Yes.
'Cause that's 31,500
Yeah.
And at 250
divided
an
by
acre.
43, 560. Yeah, it's almost 3/4, and then what are you looking at? The roundabout and 30 feet down the other side.
Yeah, and I would recommend that if we pursue that, or if you draw that up, that we stay at the 100-foot.
Yeah,
easement
which
for the
makes
roundabout
sense.
and not
Yeah.
permanent,
Yeah,
and then leave it to these guys to figure out how to make that connection whenever they want, whenever they plat.
what's that total? 482.
Oh, and I do wanna make sure I verbalize this, that I am not positioning this to get at the Yanks. I'm just.
Oh,
we're not
no.
either.
No, we're not either.
We're just, again, this is a
No.
financial calculation
Yeah.
for us at this
But
point.
because I'm a part of the city, I'm not,
Yeah.
not a
No, no,
former
we're-
engineer,
I-
that could come across differently. I just
No,
wanna make sure.
we
No.
did not ever think that.
No,
We
not,
just need to understand how screwed we are, because we didn't know about us having to build a road or anything until a couple weeks ago.
till 2 weeks ago,
So that's $500,000 that we didn't plan in this development
and don't have.
and don't have. Or I have, but then my retirement's gone.
Well, no, we don't even have
So
it.
we'll just,
Yeah.
we'll put the land up for sale and let the next owner try to deal with it. So, we're just wanting options, and again, we appreciate this discussion here today.
So I mean, I think to follow up on what Roman said, I mean, 207, it's unprecedented. I think it'd be pretty irresponsible, like of me to make a commitment that, you know, hey, we could pay for the full road, I just, because without knowing how the rest of the council would perceive it.
Yeah.
I can tell you from my perspective, I mean, I'm open to conversation, even though it's coloring outside the lines of precedent, only because, I view this area of town as being very unique. We don't have dollars, we don't have figures in front of us, so I would just wouldn't want to mislead you guys into thinking, because then that could end up, you know, those assumptions end up, you know, getting you guys in a financial situation. I don't want any more hard work for you guys.
Well, I will say, if I may, it's worth mentioning here, because it'll definitely come up with the larger council discussion, that there are two relevant precedents recently that we went through. And that one is Frank Lane, and the number of drives that come off of a private drive, or number of properties. And, you know, we're passing kidney stones over getting from 3 to 4. Is that right, Mark? I think that was the number. And then we have another one in Woods Drive, where we need to make drainage improvements, and all we wanted was a drainage easement, and an individual wanted us to build the road for them in exchange for the easement. And we backed off of that and said, you know, residential roads is the cost of development. We don't do that for you.
Plus, we don't see this road going all the way through because they've already hit council up that and they don't want this thing to go all the way through, so.
Well, yeah, that's challenges of this, because now,
Yeah.
whatever challenges you have here, people on Oak Hill are gonna lose their minds
Yeah.
trying to extend this.
Well, but those pieces are already in place.
But they're already
other
in
than-
A lot
place.
of it's already in place,
Yeah.
and I get that they don't want it, but this property needs access. And
Who's gonna lose their minds?
Yeah, really, Oak Hill,
Did you do the,
everybody here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is the type of connection we're looking at, which is part of that cut-through argument that, you know, no one's gonna do this.
No,
No,
You know, that is-
there's no efficiency there whatsoever.
but how bad does the city want emergency vehicles to be able to go through? I mean, isn't that a point also? I mean, this is something the city wants and has wanted for a while. I mean, I know the fire marshal has made several comments that they want this road.
As far as transportation, network connectivity and access, the road connection makes all kinds of sense, and we can defend it to the end of time. It is all about residential resistance.
I mean, I've never built a road. So.
Oh,
I
you're
have
talking
nowhere-
$1 million, I'm sure.
I would think so, just from the top down.
That's not
And if we have to pay Terry and build a road from the south up, we're done.
what we're done.
We're done.
Yeah, no, yeah.
The only way I see people would get, any sort of, like, even soft commitment on the road would be to, like, bring it to the full council, like, I don't know if we could do it in exact or what, but
There's a lot of other people waiting in line to do a lot of roads and worse condition already.
I get that, but. I
Because
mean,
you would be building a road from where, from essentially,
Well,
what point to what point?
from here down and across, and
Stop there. Well, yeah, you
No,
could do it all the way
no.
down ours.
well, you'd have right of way dedicated.
Yep,
from this.
once you finally,
The right of way would be dedicated, and the building of the road is what
Yeah.
would be a variance at that point.
Yeah,
For this section.
The more cost-effective one is you pay Terry, and then you build the road up and do the roundabout at the top, or cul-de-sac, whatever you refer to it as.
but the problem is they're saying they don't even think it'll get past council for,
No, we would have to build the road
yeah, I know.
and pay Terry.
Yeah, that's,
And again, the city code obviously is preempted by state law,
In terms of, yes, it is.
right? So even if, I mean, just hypothetically, I'm not saying we would, but if we were to change city code, you can't do that because state law is preempted.
Well, you would have to get our legal on board and make sure that we are clear on what does it mean to spend public funds for private benefit.
but it's not, how is that,
No, I'm talking more so about the private driveway that you talked about earlier, maybe very beginning. Isn't there, you know, you got to-
State statute number of,
Right,
yeah.
the number of drives.
Correct.
That portion of our
So
city
the
code. is
number of
preempted by state
drives is UDC,
law. Uh-huh.
the distinction between major and minor is state statute.
Okay, and I thought you said our UDC is mirrors state statute right now, or is it
Well,
not?
it depends on what part you're talking about, but
Just
in the major minor it is.
Okay, so the major minor, okay.
The number of lots off of a drive is local.
Is length of private driveway.
yeah.
So we could, I guess theoretically, change the code to allow, I mean, it was 5 driveways off a drive. We could go, hey, 15 driveways off a drive, and then their problems are probably solved, but that's just kinda, it's a little bit reckless in my opinion. Like, I don't know how we could, I mean, if the whole spirit of changing from 5 to 3 is to improve access for public safety purposes, you know, I could see it being really risky from a citywide perspective to change the code. I think that's what you're getting at though, Armin, is like.
Yeah,
maybe-
I'm just asking, I'm just trying to think of all the different scenarios, but I mean, Julie, are you still on the line?
I am.
Okay, does it matter as far as the width of that road? I mean, if that particular road were to be widened and you've got 10 homes on one single driveway, does that matter at all from a safety perspective?
Yeah, it would better, if it were wider. Of course, the big challenge with this, and you all are having the joy of experiencing this with the Pearson Crossing group, the same reason, right? If you send, the scenario that's always problematic is you send a fire truck out, they put the booms out on either side to support it, and they're fighting a fire, and there's another emergency, say a heart attack further up the road, and an ambulance can't get through. I mean, that's kind of a dramatic example, but just to make it clear. So, if this, so for instance, a 4-lane undivided doesn't pose that problem, right? Because you can get around the fire truck.
So I mean, what if the Finks were to give easement to the city where there's sufficient space for public safety vehicles to go around, and does that address some of that policy?
Well, it would have to be more than just easement, because they have to have a drivable surface. They can't set up on gravel.
No, so I mean, if they were to give if they were to, for example, build just like a cul-de-sac. I've seen in Fort Worth, some of these older established communities where it's a single road, they've got 30 plus homes, but they've got cul-de-sacs that are wide enough for vehicles to turn on. I mean, does that answer some of the public safety component?
So, of course, we're all having this conversation without the person who should be in the room, right? And so I'm a little hesitant to do that. We need the fire department in this conversation, but One of the reasons, I mean, even in the 80s when Pearson Crossing was platted, with all those lots, they knew it was going to be a bad idea. That's why they put it on the plat. We need this road needs to connect to the west when this lot's developed. Currently, the kind of development that you described, Armin, can't come in because it would, like 30 houses, it would require a second access somewhere.
Right.
Cul-de-sac is not going to do it. You're still going to bottleneck the road. And so that's the general, and again, kind of out of my lane because this is really driven by first responder requirements. But that's the reason a cul-de-sac doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, and I'm saying cul-de-sac, but really whether it be cul-de-sac or like a turnaround area where you get, you know, maybe 3-4 homes in, you've got a space where fire can park to the side, turn around, that type of thing, and then address the additional.
So a lot of what you're referring, if I can interject, Julie, a lot of what you're referring to in Fort Worth were phases or stages of residential development, and that pavement was put in as a temporary turnaround that was never removed as the next phase came in and had to do a turn. And so that has almost everything to do with the ability to turn a vehicle around, not the number of houses on a link.
Okay.
So can we agree at least that from what we're doing, it's a minor, not a major? I guess I am really struggling with how is this even considered a major when we're building 2 houses?
Because you're looking at your property.
Correct.
But your property touches other properties. And so
We're responsible for the whole
got
neighborhood
another
on
one
the
here
street.
in town right now, and it's an entire subdivision. We have a family that's kind of having a Hatfield-McCoy internal discussion, so it's not dissimilar to this, except everybody's related.
Ooh.
And so they're having that conversation about how they're going to break up their own property, but the problem is it touches a subdivision with 33 lots, and that has to be replatted as well because that road for that subdivision touches theirs and comes in, and et cetera. So it's the same thing here. I think we have, Alonzo, if I remember, if memory serves, there's 8 lots connected with this, right?
7. 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4,
I think-
5, 6, 7. That's 2.
Right.
How,
So I don't know how, and I did run this past the city attorney. I don't know how, I looked at this every which way to Sunday, and I cannot figure out how we could legally call it a minor subdivision.
So remember when I said I was making this up as I go along? To add on to exactly what Julie is saying, all of this presumed a connection from the south. And when you come from the south, both the Yangs and the guys
Staley's.
to the west, Staley's, the new 657, and everybody who touches that is part of this subdivision definement. If we come from the north, though, that may change the perspective out. That just keeps them out, the Staley's out. That keeps them out, just to the north. The previous Tyler Miller property would still be a part of it, because you'd have to come down there. And that may result in different counts. I don't know that it does. We'd have to still go through that process, and I'd have to do that with Julie's eyes on here, because me verbally saying it and her trying to mentalize it never works. Has nothing to do with Julie, just the setup.
It might have something to do with Julie.
But that may change the number of lots affected, which may impact the major-minor discussion.
I do get that, Alonzo, but I do think that's a
We're
little
stuck.
bad.
we're screwed. Okay, so we're selling.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
There's no other way. Cut our losses trying to sell the land. It's pasture.
I tell you what, let me just say this to you
We
guys.
didn't know getting into this, so.
We've been doing
This
this
is
for
our-
10 months, and this is the first time anyone has brought this up, and I don't understand. You all have known our plan for 10 months. How in the world how is this new information to us in the last 2 weeks? We have been upfront with you all from the day one,
They
before
got
we even
legal-
purchased the
They've
land.
got legal code they gotta follow. We're stuck. We're
It
stuck.
would have been really nice 10 months ago to know this information instead of 2 weeks ago. When we have hundreds of thousands of dollars in this. I don't understand. How did nobody know that this was gonna happen? This is your all's jobs. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just, I do not.
So, Brittany, just a couple things. We really haven't, I'm so sorry this is working out for you the way it is, but we really have been discussing this with you far longer than 2 weeks.
Not, I'm sorry, but not the road,
Not the
and
road.
not
The
a
road was-
major, and that's not true. No one has said anything about us building a road.
The very first conversation, and I hate to bring Katasha in because she's not in the room, but I think one of the first, conversations you have with Katasha is about a meets and bounds purchase versus a plat purchase.
And that all had to do with the barn. Yes, you are correct. We did. Nothing was still ever, and I even confirmed that it was a minor. And we even originally were planning on putting 5 houses with a cul-de-sac in the middle. And the first meeting we all had, you all said, nope, that's considered a major. So at that point, we backed off and went to 3. So we would be, for us, then with the Yang, so that's 4. So it still was considered a minor. No one has ever corrected us, nor has anyone brought in the fact that we're responsible for the whole neighborhood. Literally, the first time that we have heard about us having to build a road was 2 weeks ago when Alonzo gave us the second round of comments. It wasn't even on the first round of comments in May. So that's why we're upset. I know you all are doing your jobs, and I get it, but information wise, you're devastating. And we don't understand why we didn't know about this, even in May, on the first round of comments. I don't understand.
So, I guess the way I look at it is, kind of for all those unique reasons and circumstances, that's why, even though it's outside of precedent, I'm willing to entertain a discussion about, the cost of the road, and kind of being practical. What's really frustrating for me and also very difficult is that I don't, I'm empathizing with y'all every step of the way, and I know you mentioned some like 3-week windows and things like that, and I don't know if we have a solution for where you're at contractually and all that, and that's where
Yeah.
if I could move mountains to help, I think we all have the heart to do that. So even, entertaining the cost sharing of the road, things of that nature, but until we get those private property owners to the south to give up land, or, get some sort of quick decision and definitive decision from the majority of council to break precedent and pay for a potentially new million, I don't even know how much it would be, so unless we go through take extraordinary steps to figure out the cost of the road and then the land, and then when you layer in the contractual obligations y'all might be under, it seems like a really difficult circumstance. I hate to do this, I have to bounce out, I just want you to know we're willing to, and I wouldn't, trust me, I wouldn't if it wasn't like an extremely important call 11.
Oh, you're fine. I understand.
But, I'm speaking as 1 out of 7, willing to be as open-minded as we possibly can to figure out the dollars and cents perspective from the road, because I think there is a public necessity element here for life safety reasons. I hate just the whole concept of eminent domain, but for the purposes of negotiation, if it's in the best interest of the city to move forward and tell, basically bluff to the other owners, whoever that may be, and say, look, the city has a public necessity to be able to get fire trucks and life safety equipment. If we have to, make that sort of have that sort of correspondence with surrounding neighbors to get them to the table and be reasonable if it's in the best interest of the city, I'm willing to do that. I just don't know that we have a solution that works for y'all given your time constraints, and that's where I think it's really difficult. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. I'm happy to advocate or whatever. I don't see a clear path.
No, we needed to know what our options are, so. we can try to reduce the amount of money we lose. And it's just unfortunate.
Has public safety weighed in at all on that connection, possible connection, or not yet?
Hey, Mayor, let me know.
They support the
Anything that comes up.
The connection Oak Hill.
Yeah, I'll leave it.
It's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
for your time.
Absolutely. Take care. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Well, quite simply, to restate what I said earlier, from
I'm sorry.
the professional staff side,
Yeah,
the
thanks, sir.
connection
Appreciate it.
has so much more benefit than no connection. But the reason it doesn't exist.
Right, but they haven't weighed in at all?
They have,
Oh, they have.
they have.
They always want the connection, but you guys are always stuck in the middle asking for, people don't want the connection.
It's a Pearson Crossing
The
discussion.
Pearson Crossing discussion and on and on and on and on, where,
So what would it take for us to price engineer or get an estimate for what that road would cost?
We could have it in a couple of days. I can just call Timmy Warner and ask him to put one together.
I mean, it might be worth, at least, you know, council has an idea of what that could be, and the city has an idea, but also the Finks may have an idea, because I mean, I don't know, I don't think it's gonna be $1 million, but at least if you had that figure, it might be helpful. And
Does, if that is a feasible option, does that eliminate? I mean, I guess I don't
the
understand.
politics of Oak Hill. too.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna get shit from neighbors.
You
but
got-
Yeah.
I mean,
Oak Hill's gonna yell so much that this council will never be, I don't see them ever saying, we're gonna pay for the road, because that opens up the floodgates throughout the whole city. I mean, man, that's a tough deal. And I
So
gotta
it's,
manage
yeah,
We're
we're screwed.
I'm sorry.
All of the road pieces are there on Oak Hill though. I mean, they might be loud.
They loud, and all it takes is 5 people to come to council, that's all it takes.
Mhm.
yeah, but I mean, why do you think it opens the floodgate to the city? I mean,
Because we got these roads all around the place that people wanna develop in North Keller, and because the road is, them having to have to pay for the road is the reason why they're not developing.
but they're not giving us,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
they're willing to.
Oh,
They give us the right of way. If we pay for the road,
You know,
all we
yeah,
have roads
they'll get-
all over.
That's a good deal. That's a huge deal for the people.
well, let me ask you, I mean, is it worth it for you all for us to maybe price engineering it and get a good idea of what that would cost? I mean, or is it at that point just not?
No, sorry.
Really?
I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, it's
Right.
gonna be at least that.
Right.
That's, I'd rather try to sell this 1.3 million at 900,000, let the
Right.
next person. I mean, I don't know how screwed we are yet.
We are pretty screwed
And I
because,
know it's not your fault.
Sure.
This has just been a really bad
Yeah.
education for us.
I get it.
Horrible. So
I mean, yeah.
there's not enough bourbon and specs to keep me happy these days.
Yeah,
So,
and we don't even
we're
know
just-
if we can sell it.
Because it's not developable land.
No one, yeah, it's pasture land at this point.
And this
So
is all
we're just-
because, I want to make sure, because I've seen the emails, but I was out of town, so I haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
go through it. But this is all really trying to get to the 2 entry, correct? That's the whole point of all this exercise?
No, it's a single entry that we
Single
need.
entry.
What do you-
What's that, sorry?
And we only need a single entry. We have a landlocked piece of property that has to have access to the public system.
Right.
Yeah.
If we had 3 or less, they could access it through a shared driveway, but because we're talking about 4 or more.
Right, they
It has to
need
be a
the
public street,
additional.
whether it's one way, the other way, or both ways,
Coming from
they
the
have to have
Oh,
a
okay.
connection.
To a public street,
Correct.
not to a private
Correct.
drive.
I still am
Unless we
so
change our
confused
UDC,
how
we
we're
increase that to
responsible
whatever
for
number's appropriate.
Because we're the last one in.
houses, because we're the last one in.
Last one in.
Yeah,
So,
so I mean,
in the vein
That's
of-
what we have through all North
In
Dakota.
in the vein that misery
Is last
loves
one in,
company,
yeah.
I have highlighted easier. I've highlighted the existing plats, so if it's colored, they're already in for plats. This one has not been platted. The owner is this guy to the north, we're talking about Piano Keys, Julie. And
Yes.
the only way this gets developed is they have to plat it, but they're gonna be faced with the exact same thing.
They're landlocked.
How do they get access?
Because they're landlocked.
Hickory Place is already platted, right here. And this guy, Judge somebody, I don't know who he is, owns the house, and a very nice house up front. There's
Mhm.
not enough room to get a driveway back here.
Yeah.
They, if they want to subdivide, and I gotta believe they bought this with the future of banking it somehow, they can't develop it because how are we gonna get access unless they come across 1160
Yeah.
or get access across there?
So can
This-
we go back to ours
This is
just real
repeated
quick?
a
'Cause I gotta
time and
leave
time
here to learn
again
too.
across the city.
Full
Yeah,
cut-
so
all those
if-
colors like this, you know.
If an answer or just even a rough estimate could be given to us, if we go back, Alonzo, to that idea that if we just develop the road from here to here with the 100-foot,
Mhm.
if you could give us a quick cost estimate, because at some point, if that's
That would be less than what you're looking.
300,000 and I'm gonna lose more than that trying to sell the land, at least I know how to lose the least amount of money. if that
But
makes
the
sense.
problem still with that is
You still have to pay Terry.
You still have to pay it.
but even if you pay Terry, she won't take it
No, you have to give her some land.
for $150,000 an
Hey,
acre.
how much do you wanna lose? It's either you try to sell undeveloped, you try to sell the property that's not able to be developed.
And then that way we can sell it.
So say we can't sell this.
We can't.
We got 1.3 million in it.
Yeah.
If it costs us 400,000 between Terry and a road, then that's a better financial option than, I don't need 1.3 million for pasture. So we need options to lose the least amount of money. So if you wouldn't mind giving us an estimate on what the road would be from here and include that circle.
And explain to me again, why won't the Yanks want to?
They don't wanna lose any of their land. They don't wanna give up any of their land, and we
And how
tried
much
paying
land would
for
that
it.
be if they were to?
There's 80 feet on the lower.
0.36 acres.
Yeah, it's a third of an acre.
Either the blue or the yellow.
Yeah, either the blue or the yellow, it's a third of an acre.
And even if you give them additional,
We'd have to negotiate with them on the land that they want to the north and tell them that we're building the road. And I'm not sure we would be willing to do that, but if we can't sell this land, then we have no other option than to cut our losses and try to get something done. So.
They want 2.9 acres to connect to their 4.
They
So
want to keep their ag exempt.
they want to keep their ag exempt. And they want the barn in our stalls.
To run horses. So we have a little bit of we don't have any leverage
No, we
with
don't
them,
have
but
any
we have
leverage.
something to negotiate with.
So I will tell you this, they cannot expand their non-conforming boarding, so they can't add acreage for horse boarding. That they cannot do.
I don't think they care about, I think she just wants her ag.
I understand, but she would be in violation of our zoning ordinance
Yeah.
if she expanded boarding operation. So
expand
she
that
bought
operation.
additional property, she would not be allowed to run those horses on that additional property.
when did we,
Even
within
though
the
they're
city,
currently
change it from
Even though they're currently there right now.
4-3?
Their
You can't
grandfather.
expand, well, let's say she's running
It's
horses
about
on
2
3
years
acres,
ago when
and
we
she bought 2 more, and she
took
wanted
a
to run it
hard
on
look at
5.
5 lots
Right.
around the city.
Okay, would that force her, if she had to get a special use, would that force her to plat?
She can't get an SUP, she's running too many horses.
Well, she's running too many horses right now, to be honest. She's got 10 on 3 acres.
As a horse owner, I agree with you, but we have some regulations that
Right.
go with that. So, only because she's grandfathered in, but you
Got it.
cannot extend a grandfathered
I
use.
gotta get the
Okay, go.
Dallas. I can't miss this.
I know,
Thank you all for your
okay.
time.
Thank you.
If we could get a quick estimate on what that road would look like,
Permission to do so?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
we'd appreciate that, just because we need to figure out how to lose the least amount of money.
You may be into something on that too.
Well, let's see. All right, thank you all.
Okay, well, they may just want it to have it. I mean, we don't know why. I don't know if she's planning on boarding or not. She has not stated that. We just know that they want that 2.9 to connect to their land.
Hey, Brett, I'll
Yes.
call you later, because
Okay.
we probably need to talk with Seth on potentially marketing this land too.
Yeah.
So Seth, thanks for coming. Thanks,
Yep.
everyone.
Thank you.
To do what? To expand to add another 2 acres to the bottom? Yes, it would.
It would require them to apply.
Yes, it would.
So that would throw,
That's what I said earlier. If they expand their operation, they build an outbuilding, they do anything, it triggers a plat, which
Right.
means now they're required to dedicate right of way.
right.
Right.
So, okay.
And we've explained that to them. She's like, we're not doing anything. We're not expanding. We just want the land.
But
And-
that's
but
my
that
question
enough-
there.
that's
If she-
enough to
if she
plat.
The
purchases
purchase
the
triggers
land,
the
then
plat.
she's gonna have to plat,
That's
right?
correct.
But if she purchases on meets and bounds, then
That's
does that
correct.
force her to plat?
And
It doesn't, right?
that is also correct, but that's also your choice on how to.
Correct.
say it.
You are 100% correct. And that may be the trigger. Maybe we tell them, we can't sell it to you unless it's platted. And, you know, that may be enough for them to, I mean, they really want it. I mean, when we first bought the property, she offered to buy all of it. And then she offered to buy half of it. And then for whatever reason, they want our 7.1.
So Brittany, you've got, Alana's exactly right. As the seller, you can require that be done by plat.
Correct.
I mean, this is one reason, because people are in a hurry to buy and purchase property.
Yep.
For eons, okay?
Yeah.
It's created all these challenges, and because states aren't willing to regulate how people sell their property in
Right.
terms of making everybody plat sell.
Right, which would be nice. Yeah.
What they've done is they triggered it, they tied it to the building permits, which they can do, right?
Got it.
And so that's the way to try to get to that. But you as a seller, and I always encourage people who are buying, you know, the city doesn't have a dog in that fight.
Right.
It's just that it always creates issues for everybody. Always many can do it with a plat. And so you have that, Alonzo's exactly right. You have that ability to do it, and I absolutely would require that if I were in your shoes.
Okay. Let's just play devil's advocate and the Yangs still won't play ball. We would have to, is there an option for us to plat just our 7? So we can at least sell it? Would that be something that could get approved? Or not, because it doesn't have access?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't plat something that doesn't have access.
Okay, so we can't even plat. So if we do sell, we have to sell on meets and bounds and then let the next person deal with it.
What was the policy to say, and I do have a mediator living in my office upstairs, but, what was the policy decision behind the whole changing it from 4 to 3 on the flag lots and all that?
The long and short of it was addressing emergency access and removing the multiple driveways on roadways.
Okay.
The main answer to that one, Mary, is the emergency access.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this the one? So you can see, I'm trying to.
So I mean, is there,
See these here like that.
I do gotta go, but I mean, is there a way for us to possibly modify the code where it gives public safety professionals the discretion as to that particular road if they were to add, if there were to be an addition to a turnaround, enough radius for them to turn around, that type of thing? I mean, can we somehow add language that gives staff discretion?
So it's not just the turnaround, also the width and all those types of things.
Right.
And the problem with that, and I know you've got a meeting, we've got one too, but the trick with that is that you begin to have a lot of, what do I want to say, variables in that. And the more you put that on staff, the more dangerous it becomes, because it gets harder for staff to be consistent from individual case to individual case to individual case. And I've been in cities where staff has made that decision, and then was
Okay, well then, take away staff.
because someone didn't like it, they go to council, and then council, hang staff.
No,
I'm not
yeah,
suggesting
I
you
get
do
that.
there, but that's the challenge.
I get that, Julie. I guess then take away staff. I mean, is there a way to modify the code to give council that discretion?
On the piano, what Alonzo and I call piano keys, yes, I mean, they modified it already, a couple of times.
Right.
So these are the piano keys that are our poster children. This is probably one very emblematic of everything. These guys, without a question, will sell these back properties and
Yeah.
create something that has the flag pole of the flag.
Right.
We've got a multiple here. He's going to do it again. This is another egregious one there. Whenever they sell the front, they're going to create one, and these multiply over and over across the city. And that was the root of the discussion.
Yeah, and I think, now I think about it, I think I do remember when this came up, and I recall being maybe one of the few, I think there was another person on council at the time, I was on the council, not as mayor, that was against getting rid of the whole flag lots. I think at that point,
Right,
it was a council
right.
member.
And we didn't get
Ryan
rid of
and all
them, we
that.
limited them to a certain
Right.
number.
Yeah, they
limited
try to-
that number, we didn't get rid of them.
Right, because I live in a flag lot myself,
Yeah.
and I live in neighborhood 4, and so I remember giving the example of my neighborhood, and I said, what's wrong with where I live?
Right.
So I mean, I don't know what the timeline is for you, Brittany and David, but I think it may be, it may be one that we can have additional council discussion or maybe reevaluate it, because I personally, as long as public safety, we address that component, I don't see a problem with flag lots. For all the reasons that I think Alonso just pointed out, we do have a lot of properties that.
There's a lot of
if people
properties that wanna be
build-
developed.
Yeah, in the future, if they wanna add additional 2 lots or whatever, 2 plats, then they're not gonna be able to do it unless we modify that.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know if, Julie, if there's a way for us to maybe reevaluate it, and I don't know if there's enough support on council for it, but I would at least be willing to have that discussion, because I don't think Brittany's gonna be the only person
That
in
has
North
this
Keller
issue.
that's gonna deal with this situation.
Right. And we can, as you well know, all you have to do is tell staff that you want to put that on council, and we can bring that up for your discussion. I think it comes up every 2 to 3 councils as it is in most,
Yeah.
at least in built-out communities, because the challenge for built-out communities is other things were allowed to be built that shouldn't have, frankly. And so then what it does is it paints corners for everybody else that's left to finish out that area. The other challenge, and this one is a toughie, because you had a house go to the ground. And it was a nightmare for fire to respond to, and it blocked the entire
Yeah.
road, et cetera,
Yep.
et cetera. It was a huge issue.
Julie,
And I'm like Brittany, I live in a 1935 farmhouse, and I'm 3/4 of a mile down the street from a fire department, and that's not close enough for me in weather like this, right? Because it's so dry, I'm terrified it'll go to the ground. So that's the balance, and that's why I do think that discussion belongs to council and not to staff, Armin. I think
Sure.
that makes
yeah.
sense.
So I mean, if we were to add it as a work session item, just as an introduction piece, that would, we could probably add in the first week of August, right? Just as an introduction, you to bring it up to council and have them, because then at that point, we might be able to get temperature enough from council.
We could at
to
least
say,
know if it's a feasible option or not.
Well, how many lots how many
Right.
drives you gonna do?
Right,
I mean, that's the problem, and we're gonna
Right.
go around and around in circles, and it's a colossal waste of
I think-
time,
Yeah, but I think at least it merits just us looking at it, because I already know for a fact, there's 2 council members that I think were part of that prior conversation who were part of the folks that wanted to bring it down. So I mean, I already know, it
Some
may be
decisions.
it may be an uphill climb, but it might be reevaluating this, and at least in that first week of August, that might be another option.
Okay,
is
yeah,
you can
that would
see
be
the
great.
temperatures.
At least we'd know.
Yeah, and it may be at the end of the day, we go through this exercise and, P&Z may feel strongly and city council may feel strongly, and it may not necessarily change things, but I think it's worth at least exploring that alternative as opposed to you guys just kind of.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it does. We're the guinea pig right now, but it does affect a lot of people in North Keller.
I mean, there's a lot of people
A lot
in
of
Dakota that doesn't
properties
want any
also.
more development either.
You are exactly right.
And I think that was to be honest with you, I think at the end of the day, the basis for that change, at least from some of the council members at that time, it was more so a way of trying to avoid further development.
Right.
I mean, to be pretty cut and clear.
I'd price that street though.
We will, but we still, even if we price the street, we still run into,
Pricing.
the 2 people still won't play ball.
I'll price both streets from.
Okay, that would, yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
I
no
really do
problem.
appreciate it.
Good
Thank
meeting
you.
you. Yeah, no problem. Take care.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, let's price it and see, but unfortunately, it still does not solve the right-of-way
People are
problem.
gonna wanna do something someday, so it's best it'd be best to put that road in and do it.
I would 100% agree with you, and
Instead of all these little fixes.
it's,
I get a kick out of the people that
I
are,
agree.
that are elected, they wanna do all these nice things, but at the end of the day, it's left to the staff to manage it.
Yes.
It
And
becomes
I-
really difficult.
And I totally understand. unfortunately, in our particular position with the Yangs, they're a no. So even
Well,
if we
every
could,
person has their price.
you are correct, but unfortunately, I only have so
Not
much money.
Not every buyer has the money.
Not every buyer has the money
Every
when
person has a price.
we didn't plan on,
And if you can get some common sense on those other people up there, because it really will then open up all opportunities to them, because right now they're blocked.
Yeah,
Like,
if he wants to
it's unbelievable.
subdivide, he's got the same issue.
Yeah.
If he wants to use this back property, I have no idea where he's gonna get access.
Well, if they dedicate these pieces, you're left with 3 properties that are holding the whole thing up. Because 1160, they're coming in the next 12 months.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you have right of way, then at that point,
From here.
you already have right of way
There.
here, you have right of way with us, you have, when they plat, you can, cause you can
You'll just
tell them they have to give the right of way. So you have right of way here. So really, the only right of way is this, and then to be honest, we're willing to give you what you need. So if this person doesn't play, then
Yeah, if we
you can
utilize,
you can put the circle here and we'll give you the road.
yeah, if we utilize the entire 50 feet here, neither of these are in play for the east-west section, and only 1160 is on the hook for the north-south connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. With us dedicating this, is it an option even to negotiate with the city on paying for part of it? Because it is emergency access that wants it. It's not the neighborhood, it is,
The problem is we always make developers pay for trails and for all that infrastructure because because they're profiting from it and that's who has to build the roads is the developers from it. It doesn't make any sense for the city to start paying for that
no,
stuff.
and I do understand that, but we're not a developer and we're not making any money.
No, you're subdividing some of your property there. You told us when you started.
No, I am, you're right.
You're making money on it. Well, I don't know whether you'll make money or not.
We're not gonna make any money. No, there's no money being made.
You are.
But we are selling you are correct.
You're a developer, and so I try to tell everyone the thing, I'm so sorry I felt this way, but this is why we really say before anyone starts wanting to subdivide everything else, they should hire a professional engineer. And come in here and get all that information because I've always seen when people try to play developer, it just does not work.
No, and I don't disagree with you, and I will be we thought this was all taken care of by the previous owner, because that's what they were supposed to be doing for a long time. So that you are correct. But we had a surveyor and engineer and they were working on it and we assumed this was, and nothing was said with our discussions, so we assumed it was, and that's on us, but
Understand?
yeah. Okay, I throw a huge curveball, and what if we're the only house that puts there? We're in the same boat, correct? It doesn't matter?
It would still be.
It's the same thing, even if we keep all 7 acres.
Because we're still looking at number of properties on a
Okay,
drive.
so it doesn't matter. So at that point, we should sell part of it to at least recoup something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is length of private drive a factor at all in number of driveways coming off of it?
No.
Because if it's 10 miles long, no.
Well, where are you going with that?
Well, if there's a minimum length of, like, it has to be, X number of drives per X number of feet, like if the length of it,
Got it.
could then add on additional potential for driveways.
So the other thing that starts happening when you're talking about lengths of drive that have driveways off of them is you also begin to hit fire,
Sprinkler.
hydrant requirements, and those are expensive.
Oh, for the hydrants. Okay. Yeah, we are already putting sprinklers in the houses. That's already,
And there's already hydrants up the road.
and there is
Yeah.
a hydrant literally across the street from our property. Right there.
That's good.
Yep, it's already there. Because that's the water main we're tapping into.
Okay. So what we're gonna come out here with is Lonzo will get a napkin estimate.
Yeah.
For you and,
And Armin will bring it up to council at the August meeting and see if what the temperature is on that. I'm assuming? Okay. What do you think, Julie?
I mean, I think you've got it laid out exactly right in terms of what you're looking at. I think it's a tough road, Brittany. I hate that for you.
Well, I appreciate it. We're just, wasn't the plan. I mean, we've sold houses and all that good stuff. So, anyway, I mean, we've sold 3 to afford it.
Best of luck, and I think.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So, all right. But even if we can get the Yanks to play ball by discounting our land greatly, it sounds like we still have to build the road. Correct?
Right, and those are those sort of hurdles that I identified at first. Major, minor, number of lots on a drive, the right of way, and cost of road.
But there's no way for you all to consider this a minor because you're including all of the houses,
Because
correct?
others would have to be defined as part of this, correct?
Unless it comes from the north.
Unless it comes from the north.
Which may be a different count.
But what's the count? So let's count how many houses that is.
And that's where I said, yeah, Julie needs to see this as well, because she's the one, or Sarah will have to help us with that.
Right.
It looks like you got
Well,
1, 2,
and we will want our city attorney's eyes on this one because it's so complicated.
3 at least. And I don't know if we count yours as 1 or 3. And since it comes all the way down to here, those 2 are already platted. It depends on how many do we count for the Finks development?
Well,
I'm not gonna take a guess at over the phone.
because we only plan on putting 2 houses.
Okay,
I mean, we have our house that will go here and the Gronberg's house goes here.
so 1, 2,
2.
3, 4 would be a part of this.
1240 already has it there.
Yeah, 1240's already platted.
Well, they are platted, but they are platted with a drainage easement. That would have to be converted to right of way.
I don't.
It has future dedication on it.
No, it has
It's on the
future
plat.
dedication on it.
Okay. That's why, again,
Yeah.
we gotta make sure we got the right eyes on here so we don't
Yeah.
shoot from the hip and come out wrong.
No, I understand, but that is a little bit more positive if we do go from the north.
I think you have less players from the north, though I don't know how many less.
Okay, but my question is, if it's 4, then it's considered a minor, correct?
Julie?
If it's 4 or less, it's a minor subdivision plat.
Okay.
It cannot be more than 4 lots.
Correct, but my question is then, at that point, who pays for the road? If it's a minor?
That would still be a developer cost.
If I'm not mistaken, your ordinance says 3.
Yes. So when it comes to the building, it's 3 or more, or it's like 4 or more.
It's 4 or more for mine, but the difference between a minor and a major is 4. It can't
No,
have
we
more
have-
than 4 houses.
Yeah, but the difference
But
between,
along this line is the subdivision reg.
but the
Okay,
difference
which is-
between building a drive or building a street is 3.
Okay,
Okay, so I think we know what we need to look at, and we are now, I think there's several of us that are late for another meeting.
sorry,
so-
okay, thank you.
No, that's okay, but, it's good to brainstorm this and see if there's any way we can find a way to help you, but I think we know what the few straws we've got left to play, so, let us go do that and
Okay.
see what we can come up with.
Thank you. We appreciate your help. We know this isn't your job, but we do appreciate your time.
It is and it isn't.
I know. So, all right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good time.
How was your vacation?
Oh, fine.
Good. Anyway. Is Katasha okay?
She's doing all right.
Okay.
She'll be back in the office on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.